My name is Piotr Paradowski. I'm data expert and research associate at LWS. Today, I would like to talk to you about Luxembourg Wealth Study microdata, specifically about its structure. I hope this video will help you out in your research using LWS datasets. First, it is essential to mention that each country year microdata available in LWS contains three different files. First one, household level file, that contains household level information, for instance, household incomes, wealth, and some other information that relates to household. Second, individual level file, which contains the information about individuals, such as age, labor market characteristics, and some income and wealth information. And the third one is the replicate weight file, called Imputed dataset, that contains replicate weights. Depending on your research question, these three datasets can be combined together if you want to utilize household and individual level information in your analysis and to test the null hypothesis. You can also combine only household level file with replicate weights or individual level file with replicate weights file. All depends on your research question. How do I access these files? For instance, in Stata through the remote execution system called LISI. For instance, to call household level file, you type Stata command use followed by $sign and 2-digit ISO country code with the last 2 digits of dataset reference year. A letter at the end identifies the type of file. The H, in this case, stands for the household. What about individual level file? The procedure is the same, except that at the end you type letter P that stands for the person file. Similarly, replicate weights file, at the end you type letter R that stands for the replicate weight file. How to access these files in other StatScalp packages? Please visit our website at lsdatacenter.org. The other very useful information when talking about household and individual level files is to know that these datasets might have been imputed due to missing information. Usually, the wealth data is imputed with the procedure called multiple imputations, and this multiple imputation procedure imputes missing values, and the imputations are usually stored as 5 successive implicates of each record. Thus, the number of observations in the file is 5 times the actual number of households and individuals. A variable that tells us whether or not a dataset was imputed is called inum, and it ranges from 1 to 5. If there was no imputation, or a single imputation procedure applied by the data provider instead of multiple imputation, then the variance of variable inum is equal to 0. What else do I need to know about household level file? The LWS H file contains at least one observation for each household of the sample. If the data provider conducted a multiple imputation procedure to impute missing values, all imputation replicates are included in this file. What about individual level file? The P file includes at least one record for each individual belonging to the household, even if the data were originally not reported for all household members. For instance, in several datasets, only the basic information, for instance age and gender, was collected for all household members, and full information was collected only for head and spouse. In such a case, the P file contains also records for the other members of the household, not only for the head and spouse. Of course, the information on the other household members is missing, except the information that was collected, such as age, gender, etc. If the data provider conducted a multiple imputation procedure to impute missing values, all implicates are included in this file. What about replicate weights file? Depending on the country data, the file contains either no replicate weights, but the file still exists for each dataset, or it contains as many as data producers has created, up to 1000. For instance, in some datasets, there is 1000 replicate weights, such as for United States, Austria, or below 100 replicate weights, for instance, Australia. It is important to know that replicate weights file includes exactly one observation for each household of the sample. Should I use replicate weights if they are available? Yes. Why? Because you can get more precise confidence intervals and significant tests. For merging purposes of those three loose data files, it is important to know how uniquely identified are those files. So let's start with the household level file, which is uniquely identified by the household identifier and the implicate number variables HID and INOM. The individual level file is uniquely identified by the household identifier, the person identifier, and the implicate number. Finally, let's take a closer look at LWS files, which you can download as a sample files from LIS website. When we go to LIS website, we can go to Resources, Get Started with LIS, and here we have LWS sample files for different statistical packages. Let's use Stata file for US 16 household dataset. After downloading this file to our desktop, we can take a closer look how this dataset looks like. First, I ordered some relevant variables to show you how the implicates works, and I go to Data Editor. Here we see 5 implicates for each household. The implicate number from 1 to 5 indicates the data was imputed 5 times. If we look at variable disposable net worth, we see different values for each implicate. This means that one of the subcomponents of disposable net worth was imputed. On the other hand, financial assets for household number 1 have the same values for each implicate. This means that the value of financial assets for this household was not imputed. If we look at disposable household income, again for the same household, we also see that the value for this household was imputed 5 times, and the values are different for each implicate. Now, let's look at individual level dataset of United States 16 LWS. Let's download this and open in our browser. After we open this file in our browser, let's sort the data, HID, INOM, and open the browser. Here we can see that this household number 1 has only one person, but there are 5 records for this person, and of course 5 implicates. If you look at household number 2 has 2 persons, 1, 2, 1, 2. So for first implicate, there is person number 1 and person number 2. For the second implicate, there is person number 1 and person 2, etc., etc. Here, BASP is the variable which indicates if person saves or not. So if we look at this variable, it's only available for head of the household, which is actually numbered with PID variable equals 1. Now let's take a look at the implicate dataset, again from United States 2016. We download this and we open in our browser. And we open in state. The replicate weight file contains household identifier, DID, which is data identification number, as well as household replicate weights. Please note there is only one record for each household for those household replicate weights. Some of those weights are missing, so for instance here for household number 1, the replicate weight number 1 is missing, 2 is filled, 7 is missing, 8 is missing, and this is normal. When you use the specific procedures to analyze the data with replicate weights, Stata and other statistical packages understand how to deal with those missing values in replicate weights. Please remember that sample files downloadable from this website are for educational purposes only, and you should not draw substantive conclusions based on these files. In other words, these are artificial sample files that contain subsamples of loose datasets. Thank you for watching. If you have any questions, please contact me at paradowski@lisdatacenter.org or LIS user support.